Hi, my name is Cheryl. This is the fourth video in my second module on general paper. We'll be discussing some suggested steps and techniques you might want to employ when you're doing the summary question. Usually, I would hope to take around 25 minutes to do the entire summary question from start to finish. As I am explaining the suggested steps you might want to take when you're doing the summary question, I'll be also going into further detail in each step. Alright, let's begin. The first and most obvious thing you need to do when you're doing the summary question is to read the question. I generally prefer to read through all the questions in the comprehension the moment the exam starts, even before I begin reading the passage. This allows me to be more conscious of what I'm looking for in the passage when I'm reading it and can help save time. I highly suggest you take note of the paragraphs you are supposed to summarize from when you read the summary question the first time, and then mark it out in the passage when you're reading it for the first time. After doing this, I will just continue doing the rest of the comprehension as per usual, but I will still read through the summary question again when I'm done with all the short answer questions. When you're reading the summary question itself, this sounds quite straightforward, but make sure you read the actual question. Do not simply assume that you're supposed to summarize everything in the paragraphs listed in the question. You would usually only have to summarize the main points in the paragraph listed in the question, not the elaboration nor the examples. The question will usually specify the exact type of points that you should summarize, and as such, the question may come in multiple parts. What I mean by this is that the question can ask you for the pros and the cons of something that was described in the passage. Furthermore, the question may specify the paragraphs you're supposed to summarize from in two parts. For example, it might state that you should summarize from paragraph 6 and 8 to 10. This is extremely important as you're most likely to be unable to get any of the correct points if you're summarizing from the wrong paragraphs. Now moving on to the second key step you might want to take when doing the summary question, I think it is very important for you to mark out the points in the paragraph that you want to summarize. I find that this helps to ensure that you're only summarizing the relevant main points and not any unnecessary examples or elaboration. If I have enough time, I would try to paraphrase the main points that I've just underlined on a piece of rough paper or in the margins of the passage. I would highly recommend you doing this as opposed to writing directly in the answer sheet provided, as you will avoid any unnecessary cancellations and insertions of words in your final answer. In my experience, examiners or markers generally prefer if the final answer submitted looks neat, as it gives them the impression that you managed your time well and planned out your response meticulously. After marking out the relevant main points in the passage, the next step you would take is to paraphrase these points. When paraphrasing, do not simply overgeneralize the point such that the specificity and essential meaning of the point is lost. I find it helpful to identify the part of speech a particular word is, like is it noun, verb, or adjective. I would usually try to retain the same part of speech when paraphrasing, as that can be more straightforward. That being said, another way to paraphrase a point would be to switch up the sentence structure by changing the parts of speech. However, do be conscious of your grammar here and ensure that your sentence does not become convoluted. One of the more important things that you should do is to use connectors. Connectors separate your points and preserves clarity in your answer. Another less common trick to save words in your summary would be to use punctuation, such as parentheses, colons, and semicolons. Before I end off this video, I'd like to go through some tips and reminders that I've personally found to be useful as a student. The first is that proper nouns, that is, names of key events and things, do not need to be paraphrased. So don't waste time trying to paraphrase them. The next 2 points in this slide are mostly for your language. You must take note of your language and your grammar in your summary answer. Your language competency is quite obvious in the summary question, so most of the language marks will be based on your summary answer. Please avoid excessive use of the word it. in your final answer for the summary. The word it is quite vague and as general as a word can get. So using that word may simply end up confusing the examiner about what you're referring to in the sentence. If you do use the word it, please ensure that in your previous sentence, you specify the subject of the sentence. Another thing to avoid is tacking on commas at the end of every sentence. Extending sentences in an attempt to save words will only make your sentence more convoluted, costing you language marks. Instead, I highly recommend using connectors. Using connectors will ensure that your summary answer is much clearer and easy to understand, which will help with your overall language marks as well. Besides this, another thing that you might want to hear is that you don't have to summarize every single point in the paragraph. Just ensure you have around 12 to 14 points such that you are able to have enough points to score the answer marks. However, please note that no matter what you end up writing, it can't be some random point that you plucked from the paragraph. Your answer must answer the exact question for the summary. In this video, we've covered some suggested steps that I think you should take when answering the summary question, as well as some tips and techniques that I've personally found to be helpful as a student. Hopefully, you've learned something useful in this video. Thank you.